Hey guys, tonight we begin somewhere dusty. The year is 1937. You're lying back on a creaky bed in a rented room above a shoeshine stand. And through the cracked window, you can just hear the hum of a radio playing swing music no one seems to dance to anymore. It smells faintly of rain on pavement and burnt toast, probably your neighbor's dinner. The Great Depression is still very much a thing. Jobs are scarce, hopes are lean, and if you're lucky, your pillow isn't stuffed with old newspaper, and yet, somewhere in all that weariness, a whisper begins. Not from your neighbor yelling again about FDR, but from a thin, square book resting near your bedside. Think and Grow Rich. It doesn't shout. It doesn't promise winning lottery numbers or a step-by-step guide to yacht ownership. What it does slowly, gently suggest something quietly outrageous, that what you think might actually shape what you become. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake enough, drop your location and local time in the comments below. I love seeing where in the world you're winding down from. Now. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge softly through the mental fog of the 1930s, where the United States is still trying to pull itself out of the financial quicksand left by the crash of '29. Breadlines are real. Hope is often just a whisper. But in this dim chapter of history, one man dares to suggest that even now, especially now, you can think your way to success. Napoleon Hill. Not a general, not a president, not a tycoon. Just a skinny guy with eyes too wide and stories that sound, at best, like hopeful hallucinations. He isn't offering handouts or even advice you can take to the bank. No, he's offering mindset, philosophy, something oddly shaped between motivational speaker and spiritual uncle. He publishes Think and Grow Rich as a sort of mental survival kit blending optimism, spiritualism, and business ambition. It sells like crazy. Not because it guarantees results, but because it promises something everyone craves when lying wide awake at night. Control, a sense that your thoughts matter, that even when the world is a mess, you don't have to be, and in the quiet corners of that philosophy is you. You, sitting cross-legged on the mattress with a cup of something warm, wondering how exactly thinking can produce money. Spoiler alert, Hill never shows you his checkbook. In fact, historians still argue whether Napoleon Hill himself ever became all that rich. There are whispers about shady investments, lawsuits, vanishing business ventures, but none of that stops the legend, because the power of the idea that your mind is the real starting point outlives the man. Hill's influence trickles into modern self-help, personal development, even the seedier corners of hustle culture. You've probably heard phrases like what the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve, or thoughts become things. Yep, that's Hill, or at least ... Hillish. He was also great at rephrasing older ideas to make them sound newer. What you're stepping into, beneath the blankets and beyond the yawns, is not just a guide to making money, but a philosophy. One that's part wishful thinking, part metaphysical daydream, and part cold, caffeinated business strategy. And that blend is what makes it so sleep tricky. Because right when you're about to nod off, Hill whispers, "Hey, what if your thoughts are the only thing keeping you from greatness?" Suddenly, your to-do list starts blinking behind your eyelids like a neon sign. Maybe that's part of the plan. Hill doesn't want you resting too much. In fact, He's pretty obsessed with mental action first, followed by very real footwork. He believed that even in a world crumbling from the weight of bad loans and dust storms, the individual mind remained sovereign, a tiny, sovereign kingdom with its own currency, belief. Here's a fun side fact. Hill originally wrote a much bigger version of his book, a hulking philosophical monster titled The Law of Success, which almost nobody read because it was like 1,000 pages long. Only later did he condense it into Think and Grow Rich, which still isn't exactly light reading, but at least doesn't double as a doorstop. And this more digestible version hit the shelves just as America needed anything to believe in. Your great-grandparents might have kept a copy tucked behind their gas bill or under their pillow like a paperback talisman. There's even a rumor, almost definitely unprovable, that Hill's book sat on President Truman's desk for a while next to a small dish of jelly beans. Historians debate that too. Like many things with Napoleon Hill, truth and folklore blend until you can't quite separate the candle from the flame. But here's what one debates. Think and Grow Rich became one of the best-selling books of all time. It didn't matter that its author wasn't always transparent. It didn't matter that some of his claims sounded like bedtime fairy tales for bankers. It mattered that tired readers, anxious readers felt less alone with that book in hand. So, tonight, you do what millions before you have done. You close your eyes, not with resignation, but with faint ambition. You listen not for answers, but for ideas, for sparks, for just one sentence that might change the weather inside your head. Because whether you buy into Hill's message completely, or just find it amusing bedtime reading, the fact remains, the first step to anything even dreaming of success is letting yourself believe that dreaming might actually count for something. So go ahead, exhale, think your thoughts. Let the hum of the fan blend with the fuzzy edges of possibility. And remember, this isn't about getting rich tonight. It's about settling into the idea that your mind might just be the most valuable thing in the room. You stir just slightly, blanket tucked under your chin, one sock off for mysterious reasons. Now you find yourself somewhere between sleep and the early stages of belief. And just when you start to slip under, Napoleon Hill taps lightly on your mental shoulder. Not in person, of course. He's long gone. But through the fog of half-dreams, there's a curious little story unfolding. It begins with a steel magnate, and possibly a ghost. Hill always claimed that the entire journey, his philosophy, his mission, his multi-decade obsession with unlocking the secret of success, started with a private meeting with Andrew Carnegie. Yes, that Carnegie, the one who built railroads, funded libraries, and may have had a spare monocle or two in every jacket. According to Hill, Carnegie invited him to his mansion for a quiet chat. Hill, then a young journalist with ambitious eyebrows, expected a short interview. Instead, what followed was something far stranger. Carnegie allegedly spoke for hours about the nature of wealth, achievement, and power. And then here's where it gets dramatic. He posed a challenge. He told Hill that the world's greatest fortunes came not from luck or brute strength, or even talent, but from an invisible pattern of thought and behavior, a blueprint. And if someone could identify and organize these patterns into a set of universal principles, they could change the world. Carnegie then offered Hill an unpaid 20-year mission to meet the most successful men of the age and decode their secrets. There's just one issue with this thrilling tale. Historians still argue whether this meeting ever took place. There are no letters, no contracts, no third-party witnesses, No photo of Hill shaking Carnegie's hand while standing in front of a fireplace the size of your bedroom. In fact, Carnegie's personal papers never mention Hill at all. It could have been a fabrication. Or it could have been real, just undocumented, lost to time. Or if you're feeling generous, it might have been real to Hill, which in bedtime. Ideology is sometimes just as powerful, because whether Carnegie whispered those fateful words or not, Hill believed them. He spent the next 2 decades, possibly broke, occasionally chased by creditors, always scribbling, interviewing figures like Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, Alexander Graham Bell, and dozens more. Or so he claimed. Again, the receipts are hazy, but the idea caught on. And if we zoom out from the murky facts, we see the real point. This wasn't about proving a meeting. It was about planting a seed in your head. Right now, imagine this. What if someone did compile a list of the timeless success ingredients used by every great thinker, leader, inventor, and tycoon? And what if you could apply those same ingredients, even from the comfort of your own, slightly overwashed bedsheets? Suddenly, your lazy nighttime thoughts don't feel so lazy. They feel like training, like you're quietly preparing for something grand without even having to leave your mattress. The philosophy becomes almost ... cozy. You don't need connections, or a stock portfolio, or to be born into a Vanderbilt-level zip code. You just need a mind, your mind back to Hill. His journey wasn't easy. During his research years, he struggled with finances and often published under pseudonyms. At one point, he was supposedly working in a lumber camp in West Virginia while still imagining himself a future philosopher king of success. That's some strong internal branding. And here's a weird little footnote. During these decades of quiet research and not quite proven interviews, Hill reportedly spoke of invisible counselors. These were figures he would like Lincoln, Edison, and Napoleon Bonaparte, who he claimed advised him in his dreams. He'd meditate, invoke them, and mentally consult their spirits for guidance. Now, whether this was mental theater, early visualization, or just a very active imagination, depends on how literal you like your bedtime metaphysics, but it's undeniably charming, and it fits the core idea that even if you're alone, broke, and borderline snoring, you can still be surrounded by greatness if you allow your thoughts to be that powerful. By now, you're probably feeling a little floaty. That's good. You're marinating in the kind of idea that doesn't need to be true, so long as it feels true enough to change how you drift through the world tomorrow morning. That's how bedtime ideology works. Not with hard lines, but with soft possibilities, because maybe you don't need to know whether Carnegie really tapped Hill on the shoulder. Maybe it's enough that Hill lived as if it happened and wrote a book that has guided millions to at least brush their hair before asking the universe for a raise. Let's be honest, some people treat Think and Grow Rich like sacred scripture. Others laugh it off as the blueprint for multi-level marketing doom. But here, in the hush of night, you don't need to decide. You can just ... observe it, turn it over gently in your mind, like a shiny coin of thought. What if success doesn't start with privilege, or hustle, or grinding your molars into dust, but with one calm, vivid belief? What if you're allowed to feel like the next idea you dream could actually change something? It's comforting, really. Because unlike Carnegie, unlike Hill, you don't have to hold court in a library full of gold leaf and mahogany. You just need your own mind, a quiet room, and maybe a nightlight that flickers like ambition in miniature. So you rest your head again. The page of Hill's book turns softly, without a hand. The whisper continues. The room settles into a hush, like a theater just after the curtain falls. The clock on the wall hums gently. You shift onto your side, and now, nestled in that sweet in-between place, half asleep, half still listening, you begin to feel it. The first of Napoleon Hill's rules starts to curl itself around your thoughts like steam. Desire, not the flirty kind, not the hungry, impatient kind. No, Hill meant something deeper. Burning desire, he called it. The kind that lodges quietly in your chest and refuses to be talked out of its dream. You're not entirely sure when this idea became more than a motivational slogan. But according to Hill, this is where everything begins. Not with a plan, not with a team, not even with talent, but with a stubborn, glowing, borderline unreasonable desire to become something else. He tells the story of Edwin C. Barnes, a man whose desire was so specific it bordered on cute. Barnes wanted, not hoped, not vaguely imagined, but wanted to work with Thomas Edison, not for him, with him, as a business partner. That's like saying you want to collaborate with Steve Jobs. After reading about him in a Wired article, Barnes had no money, no connection, and, historians agree, probably a very questionable mustache. But he traveled across the country and showed up at Edison's office anyway. Just ... stood there, declaring, essentially, "Hello, I am your future partner." And guess what? Edison didn't laugh. He didn't hire him on the spot either, but he admired the guts. Barnes got a low-level job. Then he waited, and worked, and waited some more. Eventually, the opportunity came. One small moment, one neglected product Edison didn't want to pitch, and Barnes jumped at it. That one move made him a fortune. Not instantly, but steadily. And Hill turns this tale into something elemental. Barnes didn't wish, he desired. He decided, and that mental switch, the one between idle wanting and firm resolution, is where the magic supposedly starts. Now, of course, there's a fringe school of thought that suggests this story might be slightly embellished. Maybe Barnes had a little help. Maybe Edison wasn't as enchanted as the book implies. Historians still argue over the details. But in this sleepy space, accuracy isn't the point. It's the pattern. Desire is the first rule, because it's the engine that keeps turning even when you're too tired to crawl out of bed. You can be sleepy. You can be broke. You can be unsure about every other part of the plan. But if the desire is clear and warm enough to glow in the dark, you're still in motion. That's the kind of belief Hill wants you to adopt, one that hums softly even when the rest of your life feels like it's buffering. You glance at the ceiling. Is your desire that clear, that focused? Maybe it's blurry, more like get out of this job, or become someone better than a crystal clear vision. That's okay. In fact, Hill says clarity comes with repetition. He advises writing down your desire in precise words and reading it aloud every day, morning and night, a kind of bedtime spell. Not because the universe is listening, though it might be, but because you are. The more you say it, the more it becomes real. Not magic, just neurology. Your brain, bless its sleepy circuits, gets used to hearing certain thoughts. It starts to believe what it hears often enough. That's how branding works. That's how delusions form. That's how dreams get built. One whispered sentence at a time. So maybe tonight, you try it. Not out loud, not if someone else is already snoring nearby, but in your mind, softly, you tell yourself what you really want, not what sounds impressive, Not what would make your mum proud. Just the honest, thumping desire that's followed you around since before you were allowed to stay up past 10. And yes, there's a gentle irony here. You're trying to rest, and I'm handing you a torch. But Hill's idea isn't to rev you up, it's to give shape to what's already smouldering in you. That quiet thing that maybe someday you've whispered to yourself when no one's around. Here's a strange footnote. Napoleon Hill himself once claimed that desire-focused desire could actually impact your physical energy levels. He tells a story about being told his son would be born deaf. Rather than accept that, Hill flooded the boy's world with belief and sensory stimulation. Miraculously, the boy eventually gained partial hearing. Scientists at the time remained skeptical. Modern doctors even more so. But Hill insisted it was desire that shaped that outcome. Was it? Historians and audiologists still debated. Regardless, the story became central to Hill's ideology, that a determined mind could rewrite reality, even a biological one. And tonight, as you feel your breath deepen and your limbs get heavier, it's oddly comforting to think your desires might be quietly reprogramming the software inside you. So don't fight the tiredness. Let it come. Let it roll over you like a soft, weighted blanket of belief. And as your body surrenders to sleep, let your mind hold just one thought, your desire, in its purest form. Don't overthink it. Just let it settle in, like a seed beneath the soil. No fanfare, no fireworks. Just the calm certainty that it's there. You don't need to move tonight. You don't need to act. Not yet. You just need to know what you want and be, still enough to feel it flicker in the dark. The room settles into a hush, like a theater just after the curtain falls. The clock on the wall hums gently. You shift onto your side, and now, nestled in that sweet, in-between place, half asleep, half still listening, you begin to feel it. The first of Napoleon Hill's rules starts to curl itself around your thoughts like steam. Desire, not the flirty kind, not the hungry, impatient kind. No, Hill meant something deeper, burning desire, he called it. The kind that lodges quietly in your chest and refuses to be talked out of its dream. You're not entirely sure when this idea became more than a motivational slogan. But according to Hill, this is where everything begins. Not with a plan, not with a team, not even with talent, but with a stubborn, glowing, borderline unreasonable desire to become something else. He tells the story of Edwin C. Barnes, a man whose desire was so specific it bordered on cute. Barnes wanted, not hoped, not vaguely imagined, but wanted to work with Thomas Edison, not for him, with him, as a business partner. That's like saying you want to collaborate with Steve Jobs after reading about him in a Wired article. Barnes had no money, no connection, and, historians agree, probably a very questionable mustache. But he traveled across the country and showed up at Edison's office anyway. Just ... stood there, declaring, essentially, "Hello, I am your future partner, and guess what?" Edison didn't laugh. He didn't hire him on the spot either, but he admired the guts. Barnes got a low-level job. Then he waited, and worked, and waited some more. Eventually, the opportunity came. One small moment, one neglected product Edison didn't want to pitch, and Barnes jumped at it. That one move made him a fortune. Not instantly, but steadily. And Hill turns this tale into something elemental. Barnes didn't wish. He desired. He decided. And that mental switch, the one between idle wanting and firm resolution, is where the magic supposedly starts. Now, of course, there's a fringe school of thought that suggests this story might be slightly embellished. Maybe Barnes had a little help. Maybe Edison wasn't as enchanted as the book implies. Historians still argue over the details. But in this sleepy space, accuracy isn't the point. It's the pattern. Desire is the first rule, because it's the engine that keeps turning even when you're too tired to crawl out of bed. You can be sleepy, you can be broke, you can be unsure about every other part of the plan. But if the desire is clear and warm enough to glow in the dark, you're still in motion. That's the kind of belief Hill wants you to adopt. One that hums softly even when the rest of your life feels like it's buffering. You glance at the ceiling. Is your desire that clear, that focused? Maybe it's blurry more, like get out of this job, or become someone better than a crystal clear vision. That's okay. In fact, Hill says clarity comes with repetition. He advises writing down your desire in precise words and reading it aloud every day, morning and night. A kind of bedtime spell. Not because the universe is listening, though it might be, but because you are. The more you say it, the more it becomes real. Not magic, just neurology. Your brain, bless its sleepy circuits, gets used to hearing certain thoughts. It starts to believe what it hears often enough. That's how branding works. That's how delusions form. That's how dreams get built, one whispered sentence at a time. So maybe tonight you try it. Not out loud, not if someone else is already snoring nearby, but in your mind, softly, you tell yourself what you really want, not what sounds impressive, not what would make your mum proud. Just the honest, thumping desire that's followed you around since before you were allowed to stay up past 10. And yes, there's a gentle irony here. You're trying to rest, and I'm handing you a torch. But Hill's idea isn't to rev you up, it's to give shape to what's already smoldering in you. That quiet thing that maybe someday you've whispered to yourself when no one's around. Here's a strange footnote. Napoleon Hill himself once claimed that desire-focused desire could actually impact your physical energy levels. He tells a story about being told his son would be born deaf. Rather than accept that, Hill flooded the boy's world with belief and sensory stimulation. Miraculously, the boy eventually gained partial hearing. Scientists at the time remained skeptical, modern doctors even more so, but Hill insisted it was desire that shaped that outcome. Was it? Historians and audiologists still debate it. Regardless, the story became central to Hill's ideology, that a determined mind could rewrite reality, even a biological one. And tonight, as you feel your breath deepen and your limbs get heavier, it's oddly comforting to think your desires might be quietly reprogramming the software inside you. So don't fight the tiredness. Let it come, let it roll over you like a soft, weighted blanket of belief. And as your body surrenders to sleep, let your mind hold just one thought, your desire, in its purest form. Don't overthink it, just let it settle in, like a seed beneath the soil. No fanfare, no fireworks, just the calm certainty that it's there. You don't need to move tonight. You don't need to act. Not yet. You just need to know what you want and be still enough to feel it flicker in the dark. The room is darker now. Not just the absence of light kind, but the soft, plush darkness that feels like velvet pressed against your thoughts. Your breath is steady. Your limbs are heavy, but something in your mind is still humming, faint and persistent, like the last street lamp left on in a small, sleeping town. That's good. You're ready for Hill's next strange bedtime lesson, Autosuggestion. It sounds like something you might do in a hypnotist's office, under the glow of a swinging watch. But Hill meant it as something far less theatrical and infinitely more powerful. He believed that you were always programming your mind, constantly, unconsciously. Every word you say to yourself, every belief you allow to settle in, every image you repeat in your head, it all becomes part of the architecture of your inner world. And here's the kicker. Most people program themselves badly. Without realizing it, you might have been feeding your brain an accidental diet of doubt, distraction, and doom scrolling. Hill says, stop that. Not in a scolding way. More like an exasperated uncle holding up a mirror and going, do you hear yourself? So now, under your blanket cathedral, we try something else. A nightly ritual, a sleepy little act of mental gardening. You're going to plant suggestions. Small, soft, positive ones. Because according to Hill, your subconscious mind is always listening. Not like a Leximore, like a moody but attentive intern who takes every instruction literally. And while your conscious mind might be too tired, too busy, or too caffeinated to believe in big dreams, your subconscious, it's wide open. Especially right now, while you're hovering between thoughts and dreams, between awareness and surrender. Hill recommends repeating affirmations, not random ones, but carefully crafted statements of your goal as if it's already happening, as if it's already true. So imagine this. You whisper to yourself, I earn a comfortable income doing work I love. Not I want to, not someday I'll, but now. Present tense, definitive. You say it, you hear it, you feel it. Even if part of your brain goes, sure, buddy, another part, the deep, sleepy, infinitely programmable part, starts taking notes, starts building. Scaffolding for a life not yet lived. There's science here too. Modern studies in neuroplasticity confirm that repeated thoughts form actual neural pathways. The brain, it turns out, is wildly gullible, and that's great news for you, because the thoughts you choose to repeat, especially when you're relaxed, unfocused, and warm, have extra power. Hill didn't have fMRI scans, of course. He was operating on intuition, philosophy, and the occasional wild anecdote. One of his more colorful examples, he claimed that by using autosuggestion, people had cured themselves of chronic illness, reversed misfortunes, even attracted love, or business success with almost mystical efficiency. Historians are still unsure where Hill drew the line between optimism and fiction. Some say he borrowed freely from the French psychologist Émile Coué, whose mantra, every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better, became a sort of turn-of-the-century self-help hit. Others believe Hill's autosuggestion principle was a repackaged blend of religious affirmation and entrepreneurial delusion. The scholarly verdict, still a bit blurry. But here, in the quiet of your room, you don't need academic consensus. You just need permission to try. So what do you want your mind to hear tonight? You could say, I am a magnet for the right ideas. I trust myself to make good decisions. I am building something meaningful. It doesn't have to be flashy. In fact, it shouldn't be. The best suggestions are the ones that feel soft enough to wrap around your nervous system like a scarf. You repeat them, you let them echo. You let them settle into the background hum of your thoughts, not demanding anything, not forcing belief, just letting the words exist in your inner airspace until belief becomes less of a leap and more of a leaning. Hill was specific about this. It's not enough to think these phrases. You must feel them. You must mix emotion into the thought. That's what he says triggers real change. The fusion of clear intent with strong emotion, not frenzied, Tony Robbins style, Just a quiet, confident yes inside your body. And if you're wondering how you'll know it's working, you probably won't tap first. It's not a light switch. It's more like slow drip coffee. A thought here, a realization there. One day, you wake up and notice you're no longer afraid to send that email. Or you suddenly get an idea that feels too good to ignore. Or you walk past a mirror and think, I kind of look like someone who gets things done. That's autosuggestion, not a magical chant. Just steady, sleepy self-programming. You don't need a crystal. You don't need a vision board the size of a garage door. You just need to repeat your thought with intention, with softness, with belief for the desire to believe. Even just lying here, as your body winds down and your thoughts float like paper boats, you're doing it. You're reshaping your mind, word by word, whisper by whisper. So say it again, not because you're trying to win, not because you're obsessed with outcomes, but because it feels good to think in the direction of your future. Because maybe, just maybe, your brain is listening and it's rooting for you. And if you forget tomorrow, that's okay. Just try again. That's the beautiful thing about this practice. It's forgiving. It's gentle. It waits for you. Right now, let it carry you a little further into rest. Let the thought become breath. Let the breath become belief. Let belief become part of your quiet, humming world. You're already doing it. Without effort, without noise. Just you and a very tired mind, finally being put to good use. The night has gone from quiet to still. You can feel it how even the air seems softer now, like it's tiptoeing past your face so it doesn't wake you too fast. The rhythm of your breath keeps you grounded, like the slow ticking of a grandfather clock in the background of a very old dream. And just beneath your sleepy awareness, Napoleon Hill is reaching for the next thread in his philosophical quilt. Specialized. Knowledge. Now, don't panic. This isn't about memorizing formulas or reciting Latin under your blanket. Hill's idea of knowledge isn't school knowledge. In fact, he almost goes out of his way to say that general education, while lovely, is not what makes you successful. Plenty of people have degrees, Hill says, and still struggle to tie their metaphorical shoes, or their actual ones. No. What Hill insists on is this. Knowledge must be specialized, focused, directed, useful. He says the most successful people aren't always the smartest in the room. They're the ones who know exactly what kind of information they need and exactly where to apply it. It's a cozy thought, really, because it means you don't have to know everything. You just have to know your thing, your niche, your corner of the map, the weirdly specific part of the world you can master. You could be an expert in optimizing garage lighting. You could be the best at writing bios for people's online dating profiles. You could know more about 1980s breakfast cereals than anyone else alive. As long as that knowledge solves a problem or meets a need, Hill would nod approvingly even. From beyond the veil, it's also comforting because it quiets the voice in your head that says, I'm not smart enough. Hill's philosophy whispers back, that's fine, just be precise. You don't need encyclopedic intelligence, you need relevance. And here's the charming fringe fact. Napoleon Hill never completed college. He took some classes in law but dropped out, yet he managed to convince titans of industry to talk to him and then wrote a book that still shows up on business people's nightstands nearly a century later. Historians are still unsure how many of those conversations actually happened, but it didn't stop Hill from constructing an entire universe of success strategies based on what he learned, or claimed to learn. That's part of Hill's magic. He makes you feel like expertise isn't about credentials. It's about curiosity, commitment, and yes, repetition. His vision of knowledge isn't stiff. It's alive, evolving, kind of like you, right now, drifting but still absorbing. Like a sponge on vacation. And if you're wondering how to find your specialized knowledge, Hill has a sleepy little formula for that too. He says it often starts with desire. Remember that from earlier. The burning one that was gently smoldering in your chest last section. Once you have that, your next job is to seek knowledge that serves that desire. Not in a chaotic, open tab 5 hours in YouTube sort of way. More like browsing a quiet library in your pajamas. You look for what matters. You read to solve. You learn on purpose. And if you don't know something, no problem. Hill says you simply borrow the knowledge. He's a big fan of cooperation, leaning on others' brains when your own runs out of steam. It's kind of like building a quilt made of other people's expertise. You don't have to weave every square, just know how to sew it all together, which leads to a whisper of a question. What tiny thing do you know better than most? What skill have you polished in the quiet moments when no one was watching? Maybe it's editing short videos, or organizing tiny drawers, or explaining hard ideas in soft language. That might be your spark. That might be your specialized thing. Even if it doesn't feel fancy or monetizable just yet, it matters. Because when you focus your attention and hone a skill, Hill says the universe eventually takes notice. There's even a quote of his that drifts around the internet like a motivational dandelion seed. General knowledge, no matter how great, in quantity or variety, is of but little use in the accumulation of money. Now, whether that's always true, historians and economists still debate it. After all, some people do just fine knowing a bit of everything. But Hill's point isn't to dismiss learning. It's to elevate useful learning, sleep-focused, success-purposed learning. And here's a quirky aside. In the 1940s, Hill tried to open a philosophy of achievement school based on these very principles. It never quite took off. Maybe people weren't ready, or maybe schools are allergic to ideas that don't come with quizzes. Still, he tried, because he believed that everyone, not just the elite, not just the naturally gifted, could harness specialized knowledge to level up their lives. So what do you do with that tonight? Nothing. You don't need to download a course or buy a whiteboard. You just lie here, soft and still, and notice what lights up in your mind. What are you already interested in? What have you always found weirdly fun, even when no one else cared? Maybe it's in your hands. Maybe it's in your voice. Maybe it's buried under a few layers of exhaustion, but it's there, that thing. You know, or could know, more deeply than anyone else you know. Hill would say, focus there. Let that be your start. Specialize slowly. Learn intentionally. Not to impress, not to escape, but to build something that feels like it fits you exactly so. Go ahead. Let the thought float around a bit. Let it bump gently into your dreams. Knowledge doesn't always arrive with a bang. Sometimes it shows up like this, quiet, sleepy, and oddly warm. One small idea, one soft skill, that's enough for now. By now, the air around you feels thick with dreams. You're deep enough into the night that time has started to unravel, minutes stretching like taffy, seconds vanishing between blinks. Your body is still, warm, almost invisible under the blankets. But your mind, it's quietly staging blueprints, sketching, testing, revising. That's good. Because this next sleepy step in Napoleon Hill's world It's all about imagination, and not the kind used for unicorns and spaceships, though no judgment. Hill saw imagination as the secret weapon of every achiever. A soft tool, deceptively quiet but wildly powerful. According to him, man's only limitation, within reason, lies in his development and use of his imagination. Now, pause on that for a second, because in Hill's universe, this isn't just about creativity for art's sake. It's not imagine a world without gravity or let's draw a dragon with a top hat. This is applied imagination, the kind you use when dreaming up ways to solve problems, start businesses, or design your life a little differently than it looked yesterday. In your half-dreaming state, this becomes a comfort, because what Hill is saying is, your ability to imagine better circumstances is often the first step in creating them. Even if you're lying flat in the dark, with zero evidence that anything's changing, if you can imagine it, you've started the engine. Hill breaks imagination into two types, synthetic and creative. Synthetic imagination is the one you use most of the time. It's remixing existing ideas. Think of it like building with Lego bricks you already own. You combine old knowledge in new ways. This is what you use to plan a side hustle, organize your week, or brainstorm that passive income stream. You swear you'll start after you finally sleep through the night. Then there's creative imagination. That's the dreamy, spooky, lightning strike kind. It shows up uninvited. It's the whisper in your ear at 3:47 a.m. It's the shower thought that changes your whole trajectory. Hill believed the creative imagination is where your subconscious mind and what he called infinite intelligence meet. Historians still roll their eyes a little at that phrase. Was it divine inspiration? Collective consciousness? Just fancy branding for intuition? The answer floats somewhere between spirituality and psychology, and to be honest, Hill never quite pinned it down. But that's the beauty of imagination, it resists definition, especially at night, when your logical brain finally takes a nap and lets the weirder parts of you take the wheel. Now, Hill doesn't say imagination works alone. It partners with desire. Remember that soft ember from a few sections back? Imagination gives it shape, turns it into something with edges and color. You don't just want success, you picture it. You start to see how it could happen, what it might look like, how it might feel in your hands. Right now, for example, you might imagine a future where your time is your own, where your work feels aligned with your values, where your mornings begin slowly, maybe with a view you actually like, or maybe it's smaller, just one project finished, one kind message received, one meeting that finally goes your way. And yes, even as you imagine these things, some tiny, crabby voice in your head might be saying, "That's unrealistic. That's okay. That's what the voice does." But Hill says, ignore it, gently. Not by arguing with it, but by imagining anyway. Because your mental images are rehearsals, and your brain, bless its squishy little gullibility, often can't tell the difference between real and vividly imagined experiences. That's why athletes visualize races. That's why speakers imagine standing ovations. That's why you, lying here in the dark, are allowed to picture your future as something lovely even if it isn't yet. Here's a fun little fringe note. Walt Disney is often held up as the perfect example of Hill's imagination principle in action. Disney famously imagined entire worlds, characters, and parks before a single sketch was ever approved. There's a rumor that when Walt first pitched Disneyland, people thought he was nuts. Too big, too weird, too unrealistic. And yet decades later, there it is. A literal, physical place born from one man's internal movie reel. Historians don't agree on whether Disney ever read Think and Grow Rich. But if he didn't, he somehow wrote the sequel. Back to you now, eyes closed, body still, mind adrift. Here's your gentle assignment. Pick one thing, just one, that you wish could happen. Something important, but not overwhelming. Then let your imagination do the rest. Picture it softly. You don't need crisp HD visuals, just a sense of the thing. What it feels like, what it smells like, how your shoulders might relax when it arrives. Hill would call this visioning, a quiet kind of planning, a rehearsal for something real. You don't have to figure out how it happens, not yet. Your imagination isn't the contractor, it's the architect. Let the building come later. Tonight, you're just sketching, and maybe your vision will change tomorrow. That's fine. Imagination is liquid. It adapts, it evolves. But you give it power every time you use it with intention, so lie there. Picture the thing. Let it rise and fall with your breath. Let it wash over your thoughts like watercolor. You don't have to control it, just allow it. Imagination doesn't demand answers. It just asks that you show up long enough to dream with your eyes closed. You're doing it right now, and that's enough. The room has become your cocoon now. The fabric of your sleep space feels almost unreal, part memory. You're not fully conscious, but you're not gone either. It's the perfect place for the next quiet piece of Napoleon Hill's strange and sleepy puzzle. Organized planning. Now wait, don't flinch. Planning sounds like spreadsheets, Gantt charts, and the ghost of your 7th grade math teacher holding a clipboard. But in Hill's bedtime-friendly world, planning is not about bureaucracy. It's not rigid. It's not even formal. It's about momentum. About deciding what you want, and then gently arranging your life so that your daily thoughts, actions, and weird little instincts start moving in that direction. Here's the sleepy truth. Wishing is fun. Imagining is beautiful. Faith is magnetic, but without a plan, Hill says, you're just a dreamer in fancy pajamas. Which, let's be honest, kind of describes both of us right now. But even in this floaty, half-asleep state, planning can begin. Because planning doesn't need to be fast. It doesn't need to be sharp. It just needs to exist. Like a soft ladder, leaning against the window of your goals. Hill tells a story about Henry Ford, not the kind you read in textbooks, but the slower, more peculiar kind. Ford wasn't the smartest man in the room. In fact, when pressed about his lack of formal education, he famously replied that he could summon any piece of knowledge he needed with the press of a button, because he hired people who knew things he didn't. Ford didn't memorize facts. He organized minds. He planned by aligning talent. And that planning, Hill says, is what separated him from millions of other tinkerers with good ideas and bad follow-through. Historians still debate how much credit Ford actually deserves for the ideas attributed to him. Some say his engineers and advisors were the real innovators. But even if Ford just planned the system, he still became the name on the factory, which, Hill argues, is kind of the point. So what does that mean for you gently melting into your mattress? It means you don't need a perfect plan. You just need a real one. Something you can touch, even mentally, that connects your desire and imagination to the actual next step. And you don't even have to know the whole road. Hill insists that most people don't. Plans, he says, are meant to change. The key is to have something written, however messy, that can be adjusted as you go. Right now, you might imagine your plan like a trail map drawn in chalk. Some of it will wash away. Some of it will smudge. that's fine, but if you don't even start drawing, you'll circle the mountain forever. Hill lays it out like this. Your plan should be definite, flexible, and actionable. Definite in that you know what you're aiming at. Flexible in that you accept course correction. Actionable in that you can start even while lying here. One leg outside the covers for reasons science still doesn't understand. So here's a gentle suggestion. Pick one desire, just one, then imagine 3 small things you could do about it tomorrow. Tiny things, silly things, even, like writing down one idea, or Googling one keyword, or sending one question to someone who might know more than you. If you can dream it, Hill says, you can plan it. If you can plan it, you can act on it. And if you can act on it even a little, the whole world starts to rearrange itself around your effort. He even wrote about the importance of a mastermind group, a team of aligned people who help you plan and push forward. It could be 2 people, 5, 20, you don't have to know them yet. But once you start planning with intention, the weirdest thing happens. The right people tend to appear, as if summoned by invisible email. Of course, some scholars argue that this whole plan your way to riches idea oversimplifies real-world challenges. Life is messy, unfair, chaotic. Planning doesn't fix everything. Hill, to his credit, never says it does. He simply says it gives your desire structure, like turning mist into fog, then fog into bricks. Here's a quirky historical note. Hill himself rewrote his life plan multiple times. Before becoming a success philosopher, he was a coal miner's son, a reporter, a failed businessman, and, allegedly, a con artist at least once. But he always returned to his central plan. Uncover the principles of success, no matter how messy the path. And tonight, in this warm, sleepy, quiet, that idea becomes a lullaby of its own. You're allowed to rewrite the plan. You're allowed to update it as you grow. You're allowed to take tiny steps with tired feet. Even if your plan is just one mental sticky note that says, figure this out soon. That's progress. So, as you breathe in again, think of one small action you could take in service of the future you imagined just moments ago. Maybe it's learning something, asking something, beginning something that felt too far away before tonight. Let that step settle beside you like a note on the nightstand. Not urgent, not flashing, just quietly waiting for you to wake up and choose it. Your imagination drew the picture. Your desire gave it fuel. Your faith made it real. Now your plan whispers, here's where to begin. And with that thought tucked into your pillow, you drift a little deeper. There's a gentle rhythm now, like waves lapping against the shore of your mind. The night is hushed, your breath slow and steady. Somewhere beyond sleep, your inner world is still quietly assembling itself, clicking dreams into place, turning wishes into half-shaped strategies. And just when you think Hill might let you coast for a while, he slides in the next principle, decision. Not the kind you blurt out when picking a lunch order, not even the dramatic rom-com choose your destiny kind. No, Hill's idea of decision is quieter, but far more powerful. He says it's decisiveness, more than talent or luck, that separates those who win from those who wobble. So let's drift into that. Let's ease into the sleepiest TED Talk on commitment you've ever heard. First, Hill's claim. Successful people make decisions quickly and change them slowly, if at all. That might sound rigid, but he doesn't mean impulsive decisions. He means clear ones, committed ones. Decisions made with internal authority rather than crowdsourced hesitation. You know that feeling when you keep asking people for advice, not because you really need it, but because you're scared to just decide. Hill would call that death. By hesitation, a slow erosion of desire, a silent postponement of action dressed up as research. In fact, he blames indecision for a massive percentage of life's regrets. People who hesitate too long, he says, rarely get started. And those who don't start, well, they usually don't finish. He even points to real-world examples. Successful people, Hill claims, are always decisive even if their decisions turn out wrong at first. Think of Thomas Edison, who made 1,000 wrong versions of the light bulb before he got it right. But at no point did he pause and ask, should I even be doing this? He decided and kept deciding until the reality caught up. Historians sometimes roll their eyes at the clean hero worship in Hill's storytelling. After all, Edison had teams of assistants. He wasn't alone in a basement, chewing wires and hoping. But even so, the principle holds. He chose a path, committed, and adjusted along the way. Not constantly, just deliberately. And now, in this soft space where your thoughts have slowed to a near whisper, you're invited to do the same. Because let's be honest, you've made decisions before, important ones, scary ones, even wildly unreasonable ones. Some of them worked, some of them didn't, but all of them shaped you. They gave you motion, they gave you definition. Hill says this is essential. To move forward, even imperfectly, you have to decide what you want, what you'll tolerate, what you won't delay anymore, and you don't need to broadcast it. In fact, the best decisions often happen in silence, at night, like this. When no one's watching, when you can finally hear yourself without the static of opinions and algorithms. So take this moment, gently, sleepily. Ask yourself, what is one decision I've been avoiding? Not because you're lazy, not because you're confused, just because maybe you haven't made the space to own it yet. Hill says when you make that decision and mean it, everything else can start arranging itself around that clarity. And yes, sometimes the decision is small. Start the thing, quit the thing. Tell someone yes, tell someone no. Choose to believe in something you'd been skeptical about. Choose to let go of something that doesn't fit anymore. Even the decision to rest more, to worry less, to move your body kindly, those count. You might even feel a little resistance as you try. That's okay. Hill believed indecision is reinforced by fear, especially fear of criticism. He writes, with more drama than necessary, that opinions are the cheapest commodities on earth, that everyone has them, and most of them are noise. So, if you've been postponing a choice just because you're worried someone might think you're foolish, welcome to the club. But Hill would smile and say, choose anyway. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand. You, in your calm cocoon of blankets and belief, are already moving. Here's a quirky fact. Hill's own life was riddled with decisions that didn't always make sense to others. He turned down stable jobs. He spent years chasing interviews with business leaders no one thought he could reach. He kept choosing the path of uncertainty again and again, because he'd already decided deep in his bones that his mission was to find and teach the laws of success. Historians still argue whether Hill embellished some of his backstory. Was he really as close to Carnegie as he claimed? Did he really get mentored by presidents and titans of industry? The paper trail is messy, but the results, they're real. The book survived. The ideas endured. The ripple went wide, because he Decided and stuck to it. So now it's your turn. Not to make a grand gesture, not to leap into a project at 2:17 a.m., just to feel the weight of your own agency settle into your chest. That soft, warm knowing that you can decide at any time to live in alignment with your own inner compass. You don't need permission. You don't need a round of applause. You don't even need a full 8 hours of sleep. Just pick one thing. Decide, not loudly, not forever, just for now. Let the decision anchor you. Let it give your drifting mind something solid to wrap around. Like a lighthouse, faint but steady, in the ocean of your thoughts. And as you breathe out deep, slow, satisfied, let that decision whisper itself back to you. A promise made in the dark. A small vow. A seed. It doesn't have to grow tonight, but it will. Sleep now feels like a room you've fully moved into. No more shifting, no more testing the weight of the pillow or checking the clock. You're in it. This is the part of the night where even your worries seem a little too tired to keep talking. And into this quiet, Napoleon Hill brings his 10th lesson. Persistence. It's not glamorous, not exciting, not the kind of thing that gets a standing ovation. Persistence is the friend who sticks around when the party's long over. The part of success that shows up in sweatpants. And yet, Hill believed it was the most essential quality of all. Persistence, he says, is desire made real. It's faith, planning, and decision all braided into action. It's when you don't just want something, you're willing to keep showing up for it. Again and again, even when results are slow, even when no one's clapping, even when the goal feels 100 sleepy miles away. Right now, you're lying still, eyes closed, and it might not feel like anything's happening. But this too is persistence. You've stayed with the story. You're still listening. You're still open. That counts. Hill describes persistence as the sustained effort necessary to induce faith and transform plans into action. Fancy words for don't give up after one try, or 10, or 50, because most people do, and those who don't, they win. He shares a story, one that's become a classic among business book junkies, about a man named R.U. Darby who invested in a gold mine, struck a little gold, then hit a wall, literally, no more gold. So he quit, sold the equipment, walked away. The new owner brought in an engineer who discovered that the original vein of gold was just 3 feet deeper. 3 feet. Darby quit 3 feet from gold. Now, whether or not that story happened exactly that way, historians still debate. It smells suspiciously like motivational folklore. But the point remains sticky. People often quit just before things start working. You, lying here with your dreams soft around you, probably know that feeling. The launch that flopped, the pitch that got silence, the effort that never got returned. And Hill would gently tell you, good, because that means you're closer now. Persistence doesn't mean endless effort. It means consistent, intentional, informed effort. It means adjusting your plan, not abandoning your dream. It means being willing to outlast the noise. And here's the twist. Hill says most people aren't born persistent. It's learned, built, strengthened like a muscle. And you know what builds it best? Sleepy repetition, soft commitment, daily, even hourly returns to your goal, even in your thoughts. Even now, he says 4 things. Grow persistence, a definite purpose backed by burning desire. Chekhuv got that ember smoldering. A definite plan expressed in continuous action. We whispered that into motion 2 sections ago. a mind closed tightly against all negative influence. Translation: stop asking your cousin if your business idea is dumb. A friendly alliance with people who encourage you to persist. No need to find them tonight, but hold space for them. Persistence doesn't mean never resting. It means not giving up, even when tired, even when discouraged, even when the reward hasn't arrived yet. And here's your quirky historical tidbit. Hill's own publishing journey was a case study in persistence. He spent over 20 years developing the principles that became Think and Grow Rich, constantly revising, reworking, trying to get published. At one point, the manuscript was rejected so many times he thought of burning it. Instead, he tucked it in a drawer. Years later, when the moment felt right, he tried Agnand. The book eventually sold over 100 million copies. Not bad for something almost used as kindling. So, as you lie there, warm and weightless, think of one area in your life where you've been tempted to quit. Something you started but lost energy for. A skill, a dream, a relationship, a version of yourself you haven't fully committed to. Don't scold yourself. Just acknowledge it, and then, in the softest way possible, choose to keep going. You don't have to sprint. You don't even have to walk. Sometimes persistence is crawling. Sometimes it's just lying still and saying, "Not yet. I'm not done yet." You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to take breaks. But don't erase the dream. Let it wait for you. Let it stretch. Let it breathe. But don't let it dissolve, because most things worth doing take longer than we think. And Hill reminds us that if you can just stay in the game longer than the next person, sometimes that's all it takes. Persistence is the sound of your breath, continuing, the beat of your heart. Steady, the part of you that whispers, "Okay, tomorrow I try again." Not because it's guaranteed to work, but because you're not done yet, and that, in this moment, is more than enough. By now, you're floating. You've passed the heavy part of the night, the tug of war between tired and wired. What's left is this: gentle surrender, a brain half submerged in dreams, a body that no longer remembers tension. And into this gentle softness drifts something strange, a bit mystical, and totally Hill, the power of the mastermind. Now, despite how it sounds, this isn't some conspiracy of top hats and monocles plotting world domination. A mastermind, in Hill's universe, is something much more intimate and much more useful. It's a partnership, a meeting of minds, a deliberate connection between two or more people who align their thoughts, energy, and purpose toward a shared goal. And here's the kicker. Hill insists that when you combine minds this way, a third mind is formed, an invisible, extra intelligence that is greater than the sum of its parts. Sound wild? Definitely, but also oddly comforting, because it means you're not supposed to do this alone. You don't have to carry every dream, plan, or decision by yourself. In fact, Hill gently scolds anyone who tries. He says all great success stories involve cooperation, quiet alliances, trusted partners, soft encouragement whispered just in time to keep someone from giving up. So even here, wrapped in your own private cocoon, the idea is this: success becomes more possible when you invite others into the process. Not random people, not just anyone with a LinkedIn account, but carefully chosen, trusted companions. People who believe in your goal and in your ability to reach it. Think of it like mental camping. You each bring something different to the fire. One brings the map, One brings the matches. One brings the cocoa. Together, you survive the night, and maybe even enjoy it. Hill often referenced Henry Ford and his close circle of friends Edison. Firestone burrows as a living mastermind group, a strange little gang of titans who supported each other's work and pushed each other toward bigger ideas. Historians still debate how close-knit they actually were, but the law endures. Hill didn't care if they were sharing tea or telegrams. He believed their connection mattered. Their collaboration made the impossible feel manageable, and that's what he wants for you. Now, lying here, you may feel far from that kind of alliance. Maybe your dreams still feel secret. Maybe your plans are still forming. Maybe you haven't met the people who believe in you yet. That's okay. Tonight is just about making space for the idea. The gentle, sleepy knowing that there are people out there perhaps already in your life, perhaps on their way who will one day become your mastermind partners. You won't need many, just one or two, the kind who listen without judging, who ask better questions, who cheer when things go right and help you regroup when they don't. And this doesn't have to be formal. You don't need matching mugs or a mission statement. A mastermind can be as simple as a voice memo, a phone call, a text from someone who knows your goal and nudges you toward it. Hill is specific. Though these people must be deliberately chosen, not energy vampires, not nice people who secretly doubt you. You want people with shared values, similar drive, and the willingness to grow alongside you, not behind or above. And here's a quirky fringe tidbit. Some modern thinkers believe that online communities, Discord groups, masterminds, even comment threads can function as 21st century versions of Hill's mastermind. Not quite what he imagined in the 1930s, perhaps, but the principle still hums beneath the surface. Aligned minds, cooperating, creating something greater than the individuals alone. Hill even insists that the master mind produces a psychic or spiritual energy that connects participants to what he calls infinite intelligence. Yeah, that again. Historians, again, blink hard at this. Is it metaphysical? Religious? A poetic way of saying two heads are better than one? Probably all of the above. Hill was never much for clean boundaries between science and spirit, but he was clear on this. The mastermind is real, and if you want to succeed, you'll want one. So now, here's your bedtime invitation. Think about the people in your orbit, not just the loudest ones, not just the ones who always give advice, but the quiet ones, the thoughtful ones, the ones who make you feel more yourself. Is there anyone who might already be part of your mastermind without even knowing it? And if there isn't yet, that's fine, too. You're planting the idea, quietly, tonight, so that when someone aligned does show up, you'll notice in a comment thread, in a coworker's offhand remark, in a long-forgotten friend's message. It might not look like a mastermind meeting with branded folders and an agenda, but if it feels like supportive, it makes your ideas stronger and your doubts quieter. It counts, because Hill would say, you were never meant to do this alone. So even here, in the deep softness of the night, you're not really alone. You're being whispered forward by every person who ever chose collaboration over competition, who asked for help, who listened better, who lent their belief when yours flickered. Let that truth wrap around you now, like an extra blanket you didn't know you needed. The right minds are coming. Yours is already ready. Now the night feels eternal. You've gone beyond drowsy. You're somewhere new where even the lines of the room feel soft and blurred. The blanket has turned into landscape. The air hums like a lullaby you've heard since before you were born. This is the perfect place to talk about something quietly potent in Napoleon Hill's universe, the subconscious mind. Oh yes, this is the part where things get dreamy, both literally and philosophically. If earlier lessons were about action and planning, this one slips into something more fluid, more internal. The subconscious, Hill insists, is the link between your conscious thoughts and the greater energy of the universe, what he sometimes calls infinite intelligence. And whether you see that as divine truth, poetic metaphor, or just classic self-help charm, one thing is certain: your subconscious is working right now. Even as you lie still, even as your breathing slows and the world behind your eyelids turns into soft spirals. According to Hill, your subconscious mind is always awake even when you're not. It hears everything, feels everything, stores everything. And here's the kicker: it acts like a quiet little butler, shaping your reality based on what you feed it. This is why Hill emphasizes repetition, emotion, faith. He says that your deeply held thoughts, especially those you feel over and over, get impressed into your subconscious like footprints into wet sand, and once they're there, they influence your actions, decisions, habits, and even who or what you attract into your life. In short, what you plant in your mind while you're awake blooms when you're asleep. It sounds almost magical, but modern neuroscience, while not quite as mystical, does echo some of this. Psychologists now understand that subconscious programming plays a massive role in behavior. It's why affirmations work for some people, why visualizations feel so powerful, why childhood messages, good or bad, stick with us well into adulthood. Hill, writing decades before brain scans and TED Talks, simply intuited what we now measure. Your brain believes what you tell it often enough. And that's where tonight's story becomes your story. Because right now, yes, this very moment, your subconscious is listening. Not in a creepy AI sort of way, more like a garden waiting for seeds. And what does Hill suggest you plant? Simple: your desires, your vision, your belief. Not through force, but through feeling. He says that emotionally charged thoughts are what really make the imprint. Think of it like this: your subconscious doesn't respond to logic, it responds to drama. You don't whisper, "I'd like to be successful." You feel it, you picture it, you let it echo through your ribcage like a soft thunderclap. Hill believed the subconscious was especially impressionable right before sleep and right after waking, which makes this moment, here in the cocoon of your bed, prime time for planting. So what have you been feeding your subconscious lately? Stress, doubt, Twitter arguments, or something softer, something that whispers, "It's working. You're growing. You're getting closer." Here's a suggestion. Try a mental experiment. Imagine your mind as a still lake, flat, quiet, peaceful. Then gently drop in a single thought: "I'm building something beautiful." Just let it sink. No ripples, number, resistance, just that. You don't have to prove it. You don't have to list your achievements. You just let the thought fall like a pebble. And maybe tonight, as your subconscious picks up those echoes, it starts to nudge you tomorrow. In your choices, in your mood, in your posture. This is how Hill believed transformation happens not through one giant epiphany, but through thousands of sleepy repetitions. And here's a quirky bit of history for you. Hill claimed that some of the most successful people he studied practiced nightly autosuggestion, the practice of speaking their goals or affirmations out loud before bed. Some even kept notebooks by their pillows, jotting down their desires. Just before drifting off, historians argue over whether Carnegie or Edison really used such rituals. But the idea remains enchanting, because even if you don't believe in subconscious programming, isn't it kind of lovely to end the day with a whisper of hope? So here's your soft mission. Try not to fill your final waking moments with dread or distraction. No doom scrolling, no reruns of today's anxiety. Instead, just one gentle, positive idea, maybe even the same one each night. Over time, your subconscious starts to expect it, starts to believe it, starts to build around it. Hill would say this is where true change begins. Not in the boardroom, not in the gym, not in the comments section of some overly caffeinated guru, but here, in the dark, in your mind, in the quiet repetition of a dream you're not giving up on. So breathe in again, slow, deep, safe, and as your thoughts begin to scatter like fireflies, let just one soft phrase linger. It's already working. Let your subconscious hold that. You're practically underwater now. Not in a drowning way, more like being wrapped in a warm, heavy quilt of silence and space. The kind of quiet that almost buzzes. There's no more need to shift around. You've landed. And just as you start to fade even deeper, Napoleon Hill tiptoes in with something both strange and whisper-worthy. The brain as a broadcasting station, yes, a radio tower, a living, humming transmitter of thought. And if that sounds like the fever dream of a man who drank too much 1930s moonshine, just wait, because Hill, despite the quirks, had a point. Even modern science gives a respectful nod to this idea, just with a few more disclaimers. But back to you, mid-dream. According to Hill, your brain isn't just a place where thoughts happen. It's a place where thoughts travel, where they're sent out like vibrations into the world, and, more curiously, where they're received. He believed that the human brain, especially when highly focused or emotionally charged, emits frequencies, not just metaphorically, but literally, like a sort of mental Wi-Fi, bouncing intentions and ideas into the air. And when those frequencies line up with others, say, people with similar energy, goals, or beliefs, connection happens. He wasn't alone in this thinking. Around his time, radios were becoming common household items. People were just beginning to grasp the invisible magic of electromagnetic waves. And Hill took that wonder and asked, if we can send music through the air, why not thought? So he proposed, your brain is both a sending station and a receiving station. It emits whatever you're feeling most deeply, and it tunes in to others, doing the same sound. Woo-woo. Maybe, but consider this. Haven't you ever felt someone's energy walk into a room before they said a word? Haven't you randomly thought of someone, only to have them text minutes later? Haven't you had an idea that felt like it didn't come from you, but more like it was handed to you from somewhere outside? Hill says, that's not a coincidence. It's your brain tuning in. And when used with purpose, when charged with desire, shaped by imagination, and reinforced through persistence, your brain starts broadcasting something powerful, something magnetic. He even suggests that ideas can float through this invisible field, seeking fertile minds to land in. That there are no truly original thoughts, only receptive minds, better tuned. And yes, historians and scientists still argue over whether this is metaphysical daydreaming or just poetic neuroscience. But in the quiet of night, lying here wrapped in breath and stillness, the idea becomes oddly beautiful. You are, right now, broadcasting your thoughts, your hopes, your secret visions. They ripple out like low waves. You don't see them, you don't control them, but they're there. And in Hill's world, this makes you part of something much bigger than yourself. It also explains why your mindset matters, why people with heavy, repetitive negativity often seem stuck, why people who focus on gratitude tend to attract better things, not because the universe rewards politeness, but because the frequency changes. Their thoughts broadcast differently, and other people, tuned to similar channels, pick up on it. So, what are you sending out tonight? Hill wouldn't expect you to beam out a perfect, polished frequency. He'd just want you to be aware that your thoughts aren't trapped in your skull. They go places. They shape your behavior. They influence others, quietly. They either attract help or repel it. You don't have to master this. You just have to start noticing. And here's your quirky historical sidebar. The idea that thoughts are energy wasn't just Hill's pet theory. It was part of a broader movement called New Thought, which bloomed in late 19th and early 20th century America. Thinkers, spiritualists, even inventors like Nikola Tesla flirted with the idea that the mind could send and receive energy. Some took it into the occult. Others, like Hill, shaped it into personal development. You don't have to believe every part of it. Just let it wash over you. What if the thoughts you're thinking tonight are being received? What if someone else, somewhere half awake, searching, finds your idea floating past and grabs it? What if, even in your stillness, you're reaching people? And what if, in return, there's an idea on its way to you now, bouncing across the ether, soft as a whisper, about to land like a feather in your half-sleeping mind? This is why Hill says to think deliberately, not to fear stray thoughts, but to gently guide your focus toward the things you want to become real. You're the broadcaster, you're the tuner. You get to choose the signal. So tonight, maybe your signal is soft but steady. I'm becoming the kind of person who finishes what they start. Or we trust the right opportunities are finding me, even now. You don't need to shout it. You don't need to write it in neon. You just let the thought hum under your breath, like a melody you forgot you knew. And while you sleep, it travels. Hill says this is how synchronicity works. Not magic, not chance, just thought energy, tuned and sent and received. So breathe, sink, let the frequency settle. You're not alone in this. You're part of a massive, invisible radio tower of minds. And your thoughts, they're singing. You've reached the velvet center of the night. The air is weightless. Your limbs are no longer limbs, but soft extensions of thought. And even your breath feels borrowed from some deeper rhythm. There is no time here, just sensation, and just when you think we've run out of ideas to lull you with, Napoleon Hill leans in with his strangest idea yet. The sixth sense. No, not the movie kind. No ghosts. No small boys whispering, "I see dead people." The sixth sense, according to Hill, is something gentler, quieter. It's that whisper of intuition, the flash of a solution you weren't looking for, the inner compass that turns on when you finally stop trying to think so hard. And Hill saves this one for last in his major principles, because he says it can't be summoned directly. You can't brute force it, you earn it. You build it by practicing the other principles first. Desire, faith, planning, decision, persistence, imagination. All of it prepares you for this moment. The moment where answers arrive unannounced. The sixth sense, Hill says, is the door to the temple of wisdom. It opens quietly. No hinges creak, no fanfare, just a sudden knowing, a flash, a nudge that feels both inside you and beyond you, and this moment, here in the dark, where your mind has slowed to a dreamlike crawls, exactly where the sixth sense is most likely to whisper. It's that voice that says, email that person, or try it that way, or sometimes, stop, you're forcing this. Hill believed that many successful people, Carnegie, Edison, Ford, had these flashes constantly. They'd trained their minds to such a degree that intuition became a tool, not a fluke. They'd done the homework of conscious effort, which allowed unconscious insight to step in. Of course, not everyone bought this. Some scholars call it pseudo-philosophy. Others say it was Hill's way of dressing up gut instinct in velvet robes. But you, right now, you don't need to define it. You just need to feel it. Because the sixth sense isn't flashy. It rarely shows up during a caffeine high or a crisis meeting. It appears when you're quiet, when your mind is loose, when your body is still enough for your deeper wisdom to surface. Like a diver rising from below, sometimes it looks like inspiration. Sometimes it feels like guidance, and sometimes it's just a feeling that says, this is right. You've had it before. That inner yes, that goosebump of recognition, that tingle of alignment. Hill says you can have it more often, but not by chasing it, by preparing for it, by clearing space. So now, you're doing exactly what the sixth sense loves most. Nothing, you're not calculating, you're not strategizing, you're not even asking, you're just resting, which is the most generous thing you can do for your mind. Here's a curious historical side note. Hill claimed that, in his own moments of quiet reflection, he would mentally consult an imaginary council of historical figures. Lincoln, Napoleon, Edison, Darwin. He'd imagine asking them questions, and then like magic he'd hear responses in their voices. Was he channeling, daydreaming, practicing mental role-play? Historians still argue. Some say it was genius visualization. Others say it was dangerously close to delusion. Hill didn't care. He said those nightly councils gave him insight he couldn't access any other way. Whether you believe he was talking to ghosts or simply accessing hidden parts of his own psyche, the point remains, when you go inward, the most extraordinary advice often bubbles up, and so you're invited to try the same. Not tonight. Tonight is for resting, but soon, when you need a quiet answer, when the logic isn't working, when the data is fuzzy and the feedback unclear, you close your eyes, you breathe, you ask, and you listen not for words, but for nudges, images, feelings, that gentle gravitational pull toward the thing that feels most right, even if you can't explain why that is your sixth sense. And if it's feeling quiet now, that's okay. Because just by lying here, you're clearing space. You're reminding yourself that you are not just a spreadsheet of goals and checkboxes. You are a human being with wisdom that lives deeper than your thoughts. Hill believed that people who cultivated this inner guidance often avoided catastrophe, found opportunities, navigated complexity, not because they were lucky, but because they were listening to the invisible, to the in-between dot, to the faint signal beneath the noise. So tonight, let that idea stay with you. You're allowed to trust what you know, even if you don't know how you know it. You're allowed to rest and receive. You're allowed to say, I don't know yet, but I'll feel it when I do. And when the sixth sense does show up, when it knocks on the inside of your mind and says, Hey, do this, you'll know it. Not because it's loud, but because it feels like remembering. Something you haven't learned yet. Let that drift into you now, like mist over a sleeping lake. No effort, no pressure, just presence, because something inside you knows the way. You're nearly there now. The line between waking and dreaming has thinned to a single thread. It hums softly beneath your ribs. You've floated through desire and faith, through planning and persistence, through strange vibrations and even stranger wisdom. And now, as we close the loop on Napoleon Hill's philosophy, we reach his final and most haunting idea, the fear filter. Hill didn't end Think and Grow Rich with celebration. He ended it with a warning. Because after all the boldness and belief, after all the rituals and radio waves, there's one force that he says stops more people than anything else. Not lack of money, not failure, not ignorance, fear specifically. 6 basic fears, sinister little counsel that Hill believed lived inside everyone. And if not understood, not faced, not soothed, they could sabotage everything. Even your deepest desires, even your best laid plans, even you, lying here now, full of beautiful, half-shaped ideas that could still change your life. So let's meet them gently. Fear of poverty, the gnawing worry that there'll never be enough, that success might cost you comfort, that chasing your dream could leave you broke, embarrassed, or worse, dependent. Hill says this one keeps people stuck in jobs they hate, relationships they've outgrown, and choices that make them small. And he doesn't blame you. Poverty is real. But he says fear of poverty is optional. Fear of criticism, the quiet panic that someone might laugh, or roll their eyes, or post about you. This fear is one of the most poisonous, Hill says, because it keeps you from starting. It whispers, what if you look foolish? And then you stay silent, you stay hidden. Even from yourself, fear of ill health, the worry that you won't have, the strength, energy, or time that your body will betray you, that aging or illness will disqualify you from the life you imagined. This fear can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Your stress lowers your immunity, and the spiral begins. Fear of loss of love, the belief that if you succeed too much or change too much, you'll be abandoned, that people won't recognize you anymore, that you'll be left behind, or worse, leave someone else behind. Hill believed this fear often hides under the mask of loyalty or sacrifice, but deep down it's just scared. Fear of old age, not just the fear of wrinkles or forgotten birthdays, but of irrelevance, of running out of time, of hearing the whisper, it's too late for me. Hill says, nonsense. Most of the greats didn't bloom until after 40, 50, even 60. But this fear convinces you that the clock has the final say. It DOESN, single quote. And finally, fear of death, the quiet background music of every other fear. The belief that if you try and fail, it's not just embarrassing, it's final. Hill doesn't dismiss this fear, but he says we must put it in perspective. Because living scared of death isn't the same as living, and here you are, still breathing, still dreaming, still listening, and maybe still afraid. That's okay. This section isn't about erasing your fears. Hill never said you could. What he did say is that fears fade when they're faced. Not with aggression, not with denial, but with stillness, with naming, with gentle awareness. So right now, feel them. Not all of them, just the one that clings closest. Which fear has followed you into your goals? Which one has kept its hand on your shoulder while you tried to rise? Is it poverty? The fear you won't survive the leap? Is it criticism? The fear your voice isn't welcome? Is it loss, age, death? Whichever it is, don't shove it away. Hold it, like a tired bird. Tell it, I see you, I hear you, but you don't steer anymore, because Hill's entire philosophy, every law, every principle, every strange vibration of faith is a roadmap through fear, not around it. And as you breathe now, as your body rests and your thoughts slow to the softest shimmer, you realize something you've already started. Just by showing up to this story, to this night, to this possibility, you've chosen something bigger than fear. You've chosen curiosity. You've chosen preparation. You've chosen sleep, even as a kind of quiet revolution. Because this whole time, while you listened, your mind was listening too, and not just hearing, but reshaping, reordering, releasing. You are not the same person who hit play. Tonight, and whatever fear you carry, it doesn't have to come with you into tomorrow, not if you don't invite it. So let it dissolve now, not violently, just like steam fading into a starless sky. Let it melt into your pillow. Let it soften. Let it go, because what's waiting on the other side of that fear? Exactly what you've been building for 14 sections. Your desire, your clarity, your next version, your slow, sleepy success. And as your breath deepens and your eyelids fall like curtains, know this: you don't need to fight your fear. You just need to walk past it. And you already are. Asterisk. So here you are, softened by the night, cradled by the quiet, and maybe gently changed. You came here for sleep, and maybe for something more. A thread of hope, a nudge of direction, the soft echo of Napoleon Hill's strange, stubborn belief that your thoughts create your world, and not through force, not through noise, but through quiet repetition, patient attention, and faith that hums just under the surface. You've listened to stories of persistence and planning, of invisible radio waves and whispering sixth senses. You've tiptoed through the shadowy hallways of fear, then opened doors lined with golden light. You've traveled from the loud, practical world to this one place where success and stillness don't cancel each other out, but dance together. Let that settle now. Let it linger. Because this is where Hill's message truly lands, not in the boardroom or the bank or even the bookshelf, but here, in your breath, in the way you end your day, in the quiet confidence that tomorrow is shaped, not by panic, but by the soft architecture of your thoughts. There is nothing left to fix, nothing left to figure out, no plan to write, no affirmation to chant, only this, a stillness that works quietly in your favor, a mind that knows what to keep and what to release, a sleep that doesn't just restore, but rearranges like a nighttime. Gardener, tending the roots of your dreams, you've done enough, you are enough, and everything else can wait. So let go now. Let go and drift and sleep sweet dreams. Asterisk.